54 questions will be referenced back to structures that we've already gone over that have a relationship to this material. So last unit we did blood vessels, the hepatic artery, the portal vein, structures, the adrenal arteries that have to do with this next unit. Muscles, we talked about the pituitary muscles and the tongue muscles this morning and their nerves. When we do the kidney next week, on Wednesday, there's the psoas major and quadratus lumborum that support the kidneys. So where it has reference back to this unit, I might tag, or I will tag about 5 or 6 of those structures, rather than only the things that are on the lab list, okay? All the other 49 to 50 questions will be what we have listed on the digestive system, reproductive system, urinary system. So I won't be putting out, say, a bone of the foot, or something like that, that's anterior tibialis muscle or something. Yes?
Yeah, for the final exam, are they giving you like similar questions from the past exams, or?
I don't look at the past exams when I write them. The past exams are pretty comprehensive. Content-wise, being 72 questions, I'll be asking about 14 or 15. So again, similar types of questions, but I'll be focused on, again, primarily, there might be a few questions from the extremities on muscles and nerves, but primarily muscles or cells or bones that are related back to our systems. Okay? A good way to review for that, if you can come to office hours, if you want to look at your old exams, or like Cody asked, he can't make it to office hours, so send me an email and say, do you mind bringing my exams to lab, and then you can look at them during lab if you can't make it to office hours. Or another, just think through the material that you ended up having trouble with, and focusing back on that material that's relevant to this unit. All right, why don't you take a few more minutes and go over your exams, and then we'll start the digestive system. We have 3 quizzes left. A week from today, we have a quiz on today and Monday's lab, which is the digestive system. And then we have 2 quizzes our last week. So the last regular quiz will be Monday on the urinary system, the last week of class. And then quiz 11 will be 2 weeks from today, and that'll be on the reproductive system. That's kind of a makeup to drop your lowest quiz. Do you have a question?
How many of these quizzes are going to be on the lecture final that we're going to
No more than 6 of the 54.
for the lecture?
Oh, for the lecture. The lecture exam final is about 130 questions, and about 70 to 75 will be the regular test, and the others will be about 14 or so from each unit.
So Scantron-wise, are we just going to bring 2?
So Scantron, you need 2 Scantrons, because it will be more than 100 that we have on one. Our lecture exam is on Monday, the 18th.
20th, isn't it?
20th? Okay.
It's
The 4th is a Saturday, which makes sense when it's the 12th.
It's the 20th.
13th. Yeah, so it's the lecture exam is the 20th, and then your lab exam, I think, is Wednesday? Okay. Wednesday at 4 to 5.
Our lab?
Lab exam.
Oh,
It's 2 different days.
I don't know.
So double check to make sure that it's not a conflict. There isn't with the lecture, I know, but with the lab, there may or may not be a conflict, and you're welcome to move to any other time except for the 10:30 lab time if they're full. There's plenty of time in Dr. Lancaster's class, plenty of room in Dr. Lancaster's class, the 1:30. I think he has about 18, 17 students in there. Okay. Another resource today, you may know him already from his office hours. So he's going to be with us this lab as well. All right, so on page 192, 193, we're back to a sagittal view of the head, which we've seen several times before already. So we have the oral cavity. Remember, here's the orbicularis oris muscle I diagrammed in lecture this morning. And the lips, which we know are labia. So we use the term labia for lips again in the female. In the perineal area, we use the term labia minora and labia majora. But in this reference, it's to the oral cavity. The labial frenulum, remember I talked about in lecture, is that membrane that holds the upper lip and the lower lip to the gum line. I may show, we don't have any pictures of it in lab. The lingual frenulum, I do have a picture. So this is showing the uvula of the tongue, and the tongue is just lifted up and showing the membrane that attaches the inferior surface of the tongue to the floor of the mouth. It says see chart, but we don't have any images that show it on the chart. But this is a view that you might see on the lab exam. So,
What is that again?
lingual frenulum, so under tongue. Labial frenulum is lip, lingual frenulum is for the tongue. And we have the papillae on two structures. The circumvallate papillae are easily seen on our tongue model as those large raised bumps forming a chevron shape here, upside down V. That would be letter P on your diagram. Letter R would be the fungiform. I would redraw them as larger circles, about a third the size of the circumvallate, and they're kind of scattered all over the tongue, but more concentrated along the lateral edges and the tip. Letter R is in the best place for that, but they're a little bit bigger than that. And then everything else in between, the entire rest of the tongue is covered with filiform papillae. So Q, but not just in that area, scattered throughout, covering the rest of the tongue. That's the most numerous. You can see these actually better on this chart. So here would be the circumvallate, and then these larger rounded bumps would be the fungiform, and everything else would be the filiform. So, hard and soft palate, that's letter I, is the hard palate, and B as well on the lower diagram. The letter soft palate would be J, and the uvula is K. The arches, remember I said in a lecture, you could have either the palatoglossal, palatopharyngeal, arch fold muscle. Either of those terms is fine. That can be seen on this sagittal view. However, it's kind of cramped in there. So a better view is from that one doesn't show it very well, but on the mouth here, glossal is tongue, and it's more anterior, so number 7 here is going to be the palatoglossal fold. Yeah, both of them is the arch, but again, I'll accept either one. And then posterior to it, we have the palatopharyngeal. And the easiest way to identify that is to find the palatine tonsil. So anterior to the palatine tonsil is palatoglossal, and posterior to the palatine tonsil is palatopharyngeal. Okay, Jared? The gingiva are the gums, and letter H is referring to that. Another view of the gingiva, gingivitis is an inflammation of the gums if you don't brush your teeth regularly or often enough. So it's just this surface area right here, okay, just below the crown of the tooth. The tonsils we've already covered. Palatine would be M, and lingual is O. All right, looking at the salivary glands, the parotid salivary gland is the largest, and it's seen lateral, the surface of the face. So right here, just in front of the ear. Here's the parotid duct crossing the masseter, and here's the opening for the parotid duct, just opposite the second molar on the upper jaw. Then we have forming a J and kind of wrapping around the lower jaw is submandibular, and then up here is sublingual. So on this model, this would be the submandibular with its duct, and here would be the sublingual. And then the duct on the inside. So again, can probably figure that on your diagram. It looks pretty similar to that chart. So C would be subparotid, and D would be part of the submandibular, and E would be sublingual. The pharynx you're already familiar with. Oral pharynx is A, and laryngopharynx is B. Oh, did I? Okay, sorry about that. We'll go back to,
Where are we?
I'm on page 196, I guess. Esophagus is F. Okay, and let's go back and do the tooth before we do the stomach. I think I talked about salivary glands and I talked about the tooth this morning. All right, so for the teeth, you can see that the pattern of the teeth, you always want to start counting back from the central incisor, because not all of our models have 8 teeth. And if you start from the back, it may not be the third molar. So on the pattern, letter, I don't know why it's out of sync there, but letter N is the central incisor. And then it just goes back G, H, I, J, K, L, and M down the line of the names of the teeth that you have. So on this model, we have all 8. So you would have central incisor on the sagittal view, that's the very first one up front. Lateral incisor, cuspid or canine, first and second bicuspid, or you can use premolar, which is probably the more modern term for it. And then first, second, and third molar. Okay. But on this jaw model back here, if you count the teeth, you have first, second, third, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you call this the third molar, you would be wrong, because it's only the second molar, and there's the third molar yet to erupt. Okay. So always start, this is always going to be in the very center. And again, this would be the gingiva, the gum line. Now if we look at a model of the large tooth, that also has the dentition on it. So with the large tooth, it helps to have the gingiva on it so that you can see the relationship between crown and neck. The diagram that you have on page 195, the gingiva, the gum line on top of the bone, is not covering up the enamel very much. So if you recall in lecture, we have the crown. All of this is covered with enamel, but we start the neck region where we have the gum line. And in your diagram, that's way down here. You might want to draw that up a little bit higher. Okay? So this would be neck, while this is crown. So on this model, here's our gingiva. So that means from here to here is neck. All right? So going across, that would be the neck. Above that is going to be the crown. But both surfaces are covered with enamel. So A is showing crown and enamel. Neck is just not shown on there very well unless you bring your gum line up a little bit higher. Then we have below the neck, so all of this is enamel on the surface. Below the neck we have the root, so that would be B. B is also the content of the root and the crown and neck, which is the dentin. The root itself, on its surface, is covered with cementum. That would be C. So if I take this area here, I would have, if I wanted enamel, I would have to say name this layer. If I wanted crown, name this region or structure. Down here, if I wanted cementum again, I'd have to say name this layer. If I wanted root, name this region or structure. Then within the root at the bottom, we have an opening, which is the apical foramen, letter D. And that expands up within the crown as the pulp cavity. And the connecting the two is the root canal, letter F. Now, if someone has a breakdown of their enamel into the dentin, then you get a filling. If it passes through the dentin to the pulp cavity, then you need a root canal, which basically, if there's an infection, they'll pack it with antibiotics, and then they'll destroy those nerves and place a crown over the entire structure. If you don't have dental coverage or can't afford to pay for it, and it just gradually erodes away the whole tooth, they'll have to pull it. But the reason they don't pull it in the first place is that allows you to put pressure on your bone. And remember, pressure stimulates the osteoblasts. And so if you have all your teeth pulled and you don't have dentures, much less dental implants, then this is what happens. So here is a tooth, and you can see the alveolar processes that the roots fit into, even if some of the teeth are missing. And here is a jawline that doesn't even have alveolar processes. The osteoclasts have removed all of that. And we have some geriatric skulls at American River where the mandible has been eroded down to there. It's only about half an inch or so wide. That's about all you can see. Okay. So I suppose you could take a carrot or a soft piece of rubber and spend 5 minutes, an hour bearing down on it. But it's, of course, a lot better just to keep your teeth healthy. Okay, now let's turn back to page 196, 197, and look at the stomach. So we talked about the regions of the stomach as we finished up lecture this morning. And the esophagus, remember, passes through the thoracic cavity. When it reaches past the diaphragm, it picks up a serosa, because that's the peritoneum, and there is no peritoneum in the thoracic cavity. The stomach itself also has a serosa we'll talk about in just a moment. So here would be where the cardiac sphincter is, the area labeled H as cardia. Within inside that, we would have the cardiac sphincter. This bump right here is the fundus, letter I. This region right here is the body. There's not just one letter for that. M, L, K, and G are showing different layers of muscle, but they're all in the area of the body. And then this narrow portion, I caught the important part. This narrow portion is the pylorus, which is letter J. And if we open that up and look right between the pylorus and the beginning of the small intestine, the circular muscle has thickened to form the pyloric sphincter. So you have to actually look inside the model to see that, and that's letter P. We have the pyloric sphincter. Then we have the surfaces. So here would be, again, the spits like this. Okay, this would be the lesser curvature. And from the lesser curvature, we have extending a mesentery between the stomach and the liver. On the thin man chart, can you point to it, number 66, between the stomach and the liver? It's very small, the lesser omentum. Here's the image that I showed in lab. So this is probably what I would use on the lab exam. So between the lesser curvature and the liver, that membrane is the lesser omentum. And then hanging down from the greater curvature, we have the greater omentum. You can also see the greater omentum on portion right here. It's been removed on this side, but you can see it here. So lesser omentum on your diagram on page 196 is R. Both of these words and pictures are down at the bottom. And greater omentum is S. Now we'll go over the layers, the mucosa, submucosa, and so on of the stomach on Monday. But since we're on this page in the diagram, the mucosa can be seen on the inside. The muscularis mucosa layer throws its surface into longitudinal folds, and those are the rugae. So that's letter Q. We have rugae in two other organs. We'll see that term again with the urinary bladder and with the vagina, okay, where we have folds of mucosa. This model only shows the outer longitudinal layer of the muscle, so I'll go to a different model. So here's the stomach again. The outer longitudinal runs the length of the stomach wall. All right. There's two steps here. Both of these are inner circular. And then an angle, 45-degree angle to those is the innermost oblique. So in your diagram, M is going to be the outer longitudinal. Go ahead and add the word outer to that. I always describe it. L would be the inner circular. And O and K, G and K rather, and even H are indicating the innermost oblique. And then finally, the visceral peritoneum. This shiny surface here on the outside is showing the visceral peritoneum, also known as the serosa. Now, one more model that's on the next page. It has to do with the small intestine, but we're going to look at it just as the general plan, and we'll come back again on Monday and look at it for all the intestinal structures. We have two of these models. There's one on the back table, and there's this one here. They're made of plaster of Paris, so they're heavy. Don't drop it on your toe. So remember, we had 4 segments to the what I call the GPAT, the general plan of the alimentary tract: mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, externa, and serosa. Okay? So we're just going to look at those major components as they relate to this model. So on page 198, 199, letter B is indicating the mucosa. That's from this area to this area. And remember, the mucosa is formed with the surface epithelium. In this case, it's simple columnar epithelia. That's letter O. And it has goblet cells. So starting with the stomach, all the way through the rectum, we have simple columnar cells and goblet cells. Every single part of the digestive tract is going to be the same. Actually, the stomach doesn't have goblet cells, but it has the simple columnar. P would be the goblet cells. And then remember, there's an epithelium, and underneath that is loose, irregular connective tissue. And that is also known as lamina propria. You see it in the respiratory system, I just didn't use that term. So W, on that far left diagram, is referring to all this gray area here. And that's just the loose, irregular connective tissue as lamina propria. I'll come back and do the lacteal and structures that are specific to the small intestine on Monday. But this is a lymphatic, before I get to that, muscularis mucosa is letter G, 2 layers of smooth muscle, and that's the deepest part of our mucosa. So epithelium, loose irregular connective tissue, and muscularis mucosa make up our mucosa for all of our organs. Then we have the submucosa, which is dense irregular connective tissue. Remember I said I like to use the word lymphatic follicle instead of lymphatic nodule? Because this is a mistake. This is not a lymph node. The lymph node is found outside all of our systems, along the lymphatics. This is a lymphatic nodule, which is a sphere, a dense sphere of B cells and T cells. The gut is we have a whole collection of lymphocytes and lymphatic follicles because the gut is one of our surface tissues, and it's much more permeable to having pathogens pass through than the skin because it's a single layer of epithelia. So letter H is supposed to be lymphatic nodule or follicle. Cross out the word node.
Nodule?
Nodule. I prefer follicle just because it's not going to get mixed up with node. But nodule is the other alternate term. So C would be the submucosa, and then D is the muscularis externa. So if you would add the word externa to muscularis, that helps to differentiate it from muscularis mucosa. And M would be the inner circular layer, because our typical pattern has just 2 layers rather than the 3 that the stomach demonstrates. So this would be the inner circular layer, forming a constriction on the digestive tract. And in would be the longitudinal layer of smooth muscle, which shortens it. So add the words inner circular again and outer longitudinal. And then E is the serosa. So down here at the bottom, this lower surface here is showing simple squamous epithelia or connective tissue for the serosa, which is the same as we talked about with the stomach as visceral peritoneum. So it's kind of like when we were at the heart, visceral pericardium was the same as the epicardium. So that again would be E. All right, we'll come back to this as it applies specifically to the small intestine on Monday. All righty.